We are at the edge of the Gobi Desert, and this is a 200cc Shineray Mustang-5, and this is the bike that brought me and my friends here across 1,500 kilometers of Mongolia. So, I wanted to do a quick video talking about this bike because we don't get it in the States and we don't get many bikes like it in the States. This is a Chinese-made bike that is pretty much purpose-made for Mongolia, and if you come here, you will see them everywhere. So in this video, I want to talk about some of the cool things about this bike and other things to know of this, pretty neat bike that we don't get stateside. So come with me and let's explore Mongolia.
In the US, we're generally used to bikes created around the concept of fun. Some bikes achieve this with high horsepower, others with interesting engines, and finally some just plain look cool. Even commuter bikes need these traits to differentiate themselves in our competitive market. However, the Shineray wasn't designed to be fun. It was made to be practical. This starts with the engine, which is a simple single-cylinder 200cc overhead cam 4-stroke engine. It doesn't make a ton of power and doesn't offer a great sound, but it does have enough usable mid-range to carry you through pretty much any terrain. The low first gear can tractor up hills without stalling, and you don't need to keep this bike revved up to make peak power. It won't make you giggle with power wheelies, but it'll make you say, "Damn, I can't believe I didn't install it on that hill." It makes barely more than 10 horsepower, but that's enough when you look at the main roads it's going to be used on in Mongolia. The engine is laid out to be easily serviceable. It swallows pretty much any oil and functions fine using car oil. There's an electric start and a kickstart, not just so you can look cool, but also because we all know how reliable Chinese batteries are. The spark plug is conveniently located on the side for when you get a little bit too hasty with the water crossing, which are pretty common in Mongolia. It also has two 18-inch wheels, so it's easy to carry a spare tube for potential punctures. Speaking of spares, since this bike is so common in Mongolia, you can find spares at many stores even in remote villages. If we were doing this trip on Japanese or Euro bikes, we would have to carry all the spares we may need with us. But with this, you're assured that you can find a clutch cable, spark plug, or anything else in most towns. And when you can't find a spare, these bikes are so simple you can easily get creative. Like here, where one of our shifters broke and we made a makeshift shifter with a pair of Knipex pliers to get us to a welder. And since these bikes are all steel, they're easy to weld and fix out in the wild. Another useful feature, these bikes come with all sorts of racks straight from the factory. The rear rack can be loaded with all your kit, and there's even a front rack if you want to make the vague front end feel even worse. Because yes, it feels pretty interesting in the handling department. And by interesting, I mean pretty bad. Let's talk about riding dynamics. There's a pair of skinny forks in the front and a pair of shocks in the back. The front forks blow through their travel when faced with the slightest challenge, and the rear shocks don't seem to have been developed with the concept of damping in mind. The rear likes to bounce you off the seat, and the front likes to compress quickly, which makes the riding dynamics very lively. You pair this with a frame that has more in common with a bunch of hot dogs than any sort of rigid metal, and you have a dream combination of a bike that makes you feel everything, and everything you feel is bad. Here we have to adapt our mindset. We are often conditioned to make our tool better by spending to upgrade our bikes to the moon to handle every single pothole. But when seeing Mongolians ride, it becomes obvious to us that there's a different approach, upgrading yourself and your way of riding. At some times during our journey, we had the chance to observe locals ride in front of us, and the quasi-prescient way that they dodge potholes and road difficulties is really something to behold. Suddenly, you're not blowing through your suspension if you take every pothole-filled dirt road like a maze, or when you learn to read the multiple tracks in front of you to find the freshest one that hasn't been rutted by cars quite yet. As a quick aside, Mongolian roads often are just a set of dirt trails all going in one direction. While there are paved roads, they're definitely not as common. And there are some times where you can't avoid terrible roads. We rode for 5 days in the south of Mongolia, near the Gobi Desert, and the endless washboards made me dream of having any form of competent suspension. This also made us worried that after riding so long over sandy washboards, our bikes would be in pieces. But not at all. They were still standing strong and starting up just fine. The durability of these things sincerely wowed us, and while some bikes did have minor issues like the broken shifter mentioned previously, nothing major happened to us. One of the bikes developed a habit of drinking oil, and another had a slightly rough clutch pull. But given the terrible road conditions, I'd say that's a win. Aside from the terrible suspension, there are a couple of key saving graces for the Shineray. The first and most important one is the weight. Finding an exact figure online proved pointless, but I estimate the weight to be between 230 to 280 pounds. This makes it light enough to glide over rough terrain easier. I always believed that the most important feature of an off-road bike is lightweight, and this bike exemplifies that since it really doesn't have anything else going for it, and yet manages to be extremely easy to ride in the dirt. Another contributing factor to being easy to ride is a low seat height. With a 30-inch seat height, it's very approachable for vertically challenged people like myself. And the seat is an old-school seat that sinks in a little bit when you sit on it, so it's even lower in practice. Another positive trait we have to mention is the fact that you can purchase this whole bike from Shineray for less than $1,000 US, shipped. So if you get a little bit too crazy with water crossings or sand, you're not out a ton of money if you bin it. I generally like to comment on how fun to ride a bike is, and when looking at it in a vacuum, you could be tempted to say there's nothing fun about a low-powered single made from cheap Chinese components. But this would be a short-sighted comment. It is a very fun machine, given how light and approachable it is. If you or your friends get stuck, it's easy to push it out and get back on your way. And if you hit a slightly challenging section after 8 hours of riding, you can use the low seat height and low weight to just paddle your way out of whatever obstacle you're in. But most importantly, it's a window into another culture, one which sometimes lives in a very Spartan way at the mercy of the elements. When you are herding sheep in bad weather, would you want a hot-blooded, high-performance machine, or something closer to a trusty farm appliance? This is an endearing two-wheel tractor, which will work or be easily made to work by all weather in most terrain. Some of us need our bikes to navigate terrible big city traffic to get to work, but for some Mongolians, getting to work means crossing a river and wading through mud to get to your lost sheep. I think that there's a lot of value in renting the same bikes as the locals ride when traveling. It's kind of like sampling local food. There's little purpose to travel and only eat at the local McDonald's because that's what you know back home. So sure, we could have conquered Mongolia on high-powered modern machines, but by experiencing it from the seat of our Shinerays, we got a tiny taste of what it meant to live and ride like Mongolians. I hope this video was interesting to you. Mongolia was a great experience, and I'm glad to have experienced it with friends. Hi John, Jesse, and Anu, and a shout out to the tour company that rented us our bikes and provided a map for us to follow. We didn't do anything guided or whatever, but we rented the bikes from them. I'll put their link in the description if you also want to tour Mongolia on the back of a two-wheel Chinese tractor. I'm not sure I would purchase one of these in the US, aside from the looks. First off, you probably couldn't register it. Second, I doubt it would fare well in American highways, since it runs out of steam going more than 50 miles per hour. But it did remind me a lot of a worse XT250. If you like the idea of a low seat height, light motorcycle and you don't live in Mongolia, I'd highly recommend that instead. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the road.